People want authenticity. They want like a genuine feel. They want to feel like they're being a part of something. And storytelling is just, a very proven way of doing that. It's happened in cinema for a very long time. A key to telling a good story is like knowing theirs inside and out. It's about like, we want to consistently show up in an authentic manner for our audience to build lasting connections.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Dialogue with Dylan. And joining me today is Christopher Davis, who is a video business owner based out of Atlanta. And we had a film class or two together in college. And Christopher, thanks so much for taking the time. And I'm really looking forward to a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited. First time on a podcast, so excited. I'm super passionate about video and just always love to talk shop. So excited to be here.
Awesome. So we didn't really talk much at Messiah. Like I said, I think we might have only been one class. But I remember, it might have been Film in HD1. We had a group project, and I've been following what you've been doing since then, and been really impressed with just the personal brand side of things and the way that you go about marketing yourself. And I'd love to get into that. But since I, don't really know your background, I'd love to know, like, have you always been creative? What got you into video production, and what eventually led you to study digital media at Messiah and then start Merrill Film Group, your operation right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, to answer your question in short, no, I haven't always been a creative, which I feel like provides a fairly unique perspective to my business now, because the idea of camera and creative and art is still like relatively new. I started pretty much in 2017, but growing up, I was an athlete. I was always active, and quite honestly fell into that kind of like jock category a little bit. And then even coming into college, I was, studying athletic training. I wanted to be a physical therapist or something within like sports medicine. I love sports. I wanted to stay in sports, and sports medicine seemed like a good avenue to do that. My mom's a physical therapist, so it just felt like a natural kind of thing. But in 2017, my family took a vacation out west for about 5 weeks. And that was the first time I'd ever picked up a camera. My mom had a Canon 60D that only shot 720p video. So I ended up just vlogging the trip the entire 5 weeks. I think I did like 5 episodes, probably 1 episode per. I didn't realize it in that moment, but looking back now, I started to understand kind of the power of video, because those vlogs just meant like so much to my family. And so it was, I started to kind of have this like appreciation of being able to like craft something out of an experience and being able to hold on to that or have proof of that, forever in kind of this digital world. And so that really like piqued my interest in video editing, in, filming and cinematography. And I just kind of started doing this like deep dive that summer into like YouTube and just fully like self-taught. So that was in 2017, right after I graduated high school. I went to, Messiah University where we met and had some classes together. But my freshman year, I was studying athletic training and still doing some like video stuff on the side. I was doing some stuff. I played baseball, so I was doing some stuff for the baseball team and just, anything that I kind of like could get my hands on. I was shooting a lot on my own and just really like it was a hobby at that point, but it was like starting to become a pretty strong passion of mine. And that's when I ended up, going into my second year of school, ended up switching my major to digital media. It felt like that was a good fit. I went with digital media because I didn't want something that was as narrow as film studies, because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in my career. I didn't have huge like Hollywood aspirations. I wasn't like, oh, I want to be, Spielberg or Tarantino. So I just didn't really know. So I ended up going with digital media. It felt like a good kind of, middle ground to start. And so anyway, I learned a lot in school, shot a lot of videos. I ended up having an internship, for a government contracting company actually, but I was working in their marketing department. And everything just kind of started snowballing from there. And I really just like never looked back. Once I switched my major going into my sophomore year, it felt like everything kind of became about being a creative, became about, filming and being, a videographer, or as I like to say now, a video strategist. And I kind of just like dove into this world head first and really like never looked back. It was one of the best things I ever did, I felt like, and, super excited to kind of where it's brought me today. Just some of the rooms that I've been able to be in, through my camera essentially. And, just had a lot of really cool experiences. So yeah, it's been quite the journey, and I love that I don't necessarily have the story of, I've had a camera in my hand since I was 3, or something like that. It wasn't something that I guess came too naturally for me. It was something that I really had to like work hard for, not only from the creative part, but also just like the stamina of, being in the film industry and what that comes with. And, that learning curve of being a creative and all that. So it's been quite a journey.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, I can totally relate to the part of your story where you were learning from YouTube and just being self-taught in that regard. That's something that I did since I was like 13 or 14, and I would like make these like action movie videos with my siblings in the backyard, and like use an iMovie to try to put special effects together and all that. And like how do you make this effect, and just search how to do it in YouTube. So I guess my our stories are sort of similar. I would say mine is just I've always had like the vocation, or I don't know what the right word is, but I've always like known that I wanted to study film or, be in the industry. For me, my role, or the way that I view my place in the film industry or video business has changed over time, which I think is good. Cause like back in the day, I wanted to be like a cinematographer, and then I like wanted to be a director, which I think is like the natural instinct for people. Like once they get into it, is like, oh yeah, you want to be in charge of everything, or you want to have total creative control. And then like I was fortunate growing up. Like my parents have a graphic design company that they've owned for a while, so that gave me the opportunity to work, like some of their clients who they did websites for would like need video. So that gave me the chance to like get my foot in the door and actually like work on some paid gigs. And then I started to shift my perspective from it being like, okay, this is a hobby, to, okay, we can actually like make money doing this and get like an ROI for companies and stuff like that. So that's sort of, things went in that direction. But I'd like to talk about, the experience of studying digital media in college, and just the place that has for creative careers in general right now. Because like I said before, I just knew that I wanted to study film. Like digital media wasn't even on my radar. And looking back on it, I probably would have done that instead. But I was just so adamant about like, I'm a film major, which I think was, that was fine at the time. But in hindsight, it does kind of seem a little bit like limiting in terms of, and I got that impression from the film classes I took in Messiah, where it was like, everyone wants to go to Hollywood or take the narrative route. And there wasn't really an emphasis on business or freelancing or anything like that. So just give me your like impression of, or like your takeaways. Cause obviously I just did a year there, and you actually finished your degree at Messiah. So just tell me about your time there, your impression of the classes, what the biggest benefits were, and what parts you thought were a little bit lacking.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think overall the program seemed pretty solid. I mean, it was the only program that I went through, so I really have nothing to compare it to. But I think that, just like everything, there were pros and cons to it. I would say some of the biggest pros were just the collaboration with other people. I think as a creative, it's like imperative to know how to work with other people and to kind of be putting off energy or an environment that makes people want to work with you. And I think that that's like goes far beyond learning, any sort of skill or having some sort of technical knowledge. Like if people don't want to work with you, it doesn't matter how good you are. So I do think that they did a good job of like, class projects and just learning collaboration. The thing that I felt like was lacking, and I won't speak for every program, but I do think that this is probably a common maybe gripe of college programs, is just the lack of like preparation for real world experiences. And I only had maybe one class that I felt like did this really well. It wasn't even a film class. Being a digital media student, I had to take different forms of media. So I took a typography and design class, which is like really outside of my lane. Being a new creative in general, I was like still trying to figure out, the video stuff. So I was like not really focused on design and typography, although that is one of my favorite classes that I took there. And it's partly because the professor treated it so much like a real world, situation. He was very intentional about kind of curating an experience for his students that were like, no, this is how, you're going to be treated in the real world. And, of course it wasn't perfect. Not everything can be, you can't exactly replicate every situation, but, that was one thing that I did appreciate. But yeah, overall, like the things that I felt like lacked, one were actually like some technical, application type of, teaching, learning like specific, softwares, video editing softwares. I know that they focused on Adobe, but I felt like I was trying to like learn a program on my own and complete my assignments at the same time. And maybe that was due to kind of a lack of paying attention in class. Maybe I missed that part. I don't know. But I like really struggled to kind of catch my bearings on, Premiere Pro and After Effects. And I'm like trying to complete these projects while also like learning a program. And that felt challenging. But yeah, just, I guess overall it felt lacking, in kind of that preparation of sending me out into the real world. And then ultimately the biggest one I would say is just a lack of like business knowledge. And I know that, we're there to like learn film and we're there to learn digital media and, whatever your concentration is. But, I left school really having no idea of like, how to pitch a project or, how to put together a proposal, and things like that. So in terms of that, I was just so ignorant leaving college, and I didn't have to do that right away. I ended up working in-house right out of school for a government contracting company on their marketing team. So I was able to learn about that there a little bit more so. But yeah, I left feeling like, okay, I know how to complete the project, but I don't know how to get the project. I don't know how to like land the project. I don't know how to create client relationships. I don't know how to do outreach. I don't know how to market myself. And I didn't even know how to like get picked up by, say, another director or networking with those people, producers and other DPs in the industry and things like that. So it felt like there was just that piece that was missing, like one last, like if we had one or two more classes in that program to kind of take us to that next step, I think that could have been really valuable. But overall, yeah, don't want to bash Messiah's program, anything like that. I think that that's probably a flaw of the majority of programs. And I think that that's, something people kind of have a negative viewpoint about college in general. Is like, how much does it really prepare you for the real world?
Yeah, I really like that perspective. And like, I'm usually I try to be cautious and not make blanket statements. Like when I like criticize like creative programs or degrees in college, but it does seem like it is a theme. Like you said, like I did after Messiah, I transferred to Temple, and most of the classes that I had to take as a sophomore, credit wise, I was a sophomore, were all theory based. I had to take some repeat ones because they didn't directly transfer over from Messiah. And I remember there was this one course that was called Navigating the Freelance World. But I think, and I could be wrong about this, but from what I remember, it was an elective and you can only take it as a senior. I mean, like that seems like one of the most important courses you can take, but
Yeah.
they almost treat it as like an afterthought. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you can take it if you want, and you can only take it right before you enter the workforce. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it just kind of seems like a little lopsided at times because
Yeah.
the theory is important and the technical skills are so important. Like, but it's like it's obviously a prerequisite in order to be successful in
Yeah.
like in whatever you choose to pursue. If you work like a 9 to 5 or you do your own business. But it's just kind of like the theory only goes so far if you don't know how to implement it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that kind of segues perfectly into my next question, which is, you finish your time at Messiah and then you transition into the workforce. Like, was that a smooth transition, or like what were the biggest lessons that you learned, like once you were actually able to be like, okay, because I'm sure everything like is a lot more consequential. Like if you mess up on a project at Messiah, it would like the consequences, oh, you like get a lower letter grade, but now there's actually paying clients and the implications are a lot greater. So like, tell me about just that whole transition into the workforce.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It wasn't a terrible transition for me because the company that I started working for, so I graduated in December of 2020, and I had been interning with the company that I started working for since the summer before, or maybe even a year before then. So I had been interning with them for a while. So I was pretty integrated into their team. I was on a team of, I guess, 4 of us. My boss was the creative director. I can't even remember what my title was. I mean, it was intern up until I graduated, but, I was working, in like business development and marketing kind of at the same time. And, I remember I made a typo on, maybe it was a Facebook post or something like that. And it was, a big consequence. Like we had to take the post down. I kind of had like, a bit of a lecture, and, they reprimanded me for it. And I was kind of like, as I was reflecting on that moment, I was like, wow, this is, a lot different. Like you make a misspelling or something or a typo like that, in class, it's like, oh, a little bit of embarrassment, whatever. But here it was like, oh my gosh, like I put this out on behalf of my employer and the company that I work for, which is much greater than me. And I made a mistake, and now I have to like pay for that. And so it was a good transition because I had the intern experience. But overall it was still like, it was jarring. It was hard to get used to the idea of like, working 9 to 5, 5 days a week. Like that was something completely different, than when we were in school, right? On like a semester-based schedule. I remember getting to like May and June and being like, where's my 3-month break? Like I've been working so hard. Like, why am I not able to take off for 3 months, and have a summer vacation break? So there were some challenges there. And just building up, I guess, that stamina of being, in the workforce. And, I don't know, psychologically, it was kind of like when you're in school, it's always like, okay, the next grade, right? Like, oh, I got to make it to the next year or the next semester or whatever that looks like. But then when you're out in the workforce, you're just kind of like there and you're like floating in the workforce, and you're like, all right, like I could be working this job for the next 6 months, for the next 6 years. Like that's kind of like in my control. Like I can kind of decide that. So it was a bit of that, kind of a little bit jarring. And then also too, just like working on, real projects with real impact and, real results. And the work that I was doing for this business was, yes, it was important. I don't want to like minimize it, but it also wasn't client facing. Like I was doing a lot of videos for our marketing team. And it wasn't necessarily, I wasn't in the position of like, I'm filming this video for one of our clients. It was like, I'm filming this video for our business. So the stakes weren't as high. And it was kind of a nice segue into the next job I had, which was an agency job. But it was still like, it was a difficult transition. I also did that transition during COVID. And so nobody was like in the office. And I was kind of this semi new, not really new employee to this company. And, but we were all remote. So it was like I was doing Teams meetings and all that kind of jazz, but, didn't have that opportunity to like have maybe a more classic like work experience kind of entering into that workforce. So that also brought some interesting challenges. But yeah, overall, I mean, it was a smooth transition, but I learned so much in that first year. I mean, I think I shot like 60 interviews, in that first year that I worked there. And that was my last year working there. I worked there for a year. And yeah, I just learned a ton and was really just trying to be a sponge and like soak it all in and in a way like treated myself like I was still in school and just being like, I'm like really here to learn and gain as much information as I can.
Awesome. Yeah. The way I like to think about it is every stepping stone in your career has a purpose, and nothing is really wasted if you think about it. Because even if you take a job and it doesn't work out, then at least you figured out like the reasons why it didn't work out, hopefully, or ways that you can improve, or maybe it's work or an industry that you don't feel very passionate about. And then now so you can move on to something else and try to figure out what you are passionate about. So I just think that that's like a great way to think about things. Like if you do a film program, if you take classes here or there, if you take this job, if you put like a whole offer together, and some things will work, some things won't. And that's the beauty of the process. And that's the way that I like to think about things. And then when was the moment where you realized that I'm sure it was always in the back of your mind that, oh, maybe one day I could do my own operation full time or really go all in on that. So I'm sure that was always like an idea, but when was the moment where you actually thought like I could do something on my own?
Yeah, it happened over a pretty long period of time in a way. For the most part, most of my life, even when I was wanting to do sports medicine and be kind of in that like sports medicine world, I always knew that I wanted my own thing, my own business, my own practice, my own agency, my own company, whatever that looked like. And so I always kind of knew that I wanted that autonomy because I always felt like I had what it would take to like run a team. But my initial plan, which it doesn't often go with your initial plan, but my initial plan was, that I would gain as much experience, through my 20s and basically like learn on someone else's dime, like learn how to run a business, learn the ins and outs, learn how to deal with clients, everything that goes with owning a business, everything that goes with, working with people and having client relationships. Like I was like, I'll just learn that on somebody else's dime. And then when I have the money and I feel ready, I'm going to go ahead and launch my own thing. And so, after my year at that corporate job, I ended up pretty quickly finding an agency gig. And that's where I really kind of started to have more of an understanding of what it took to run a business and more of an understanding of like working with clients, because now I was in a position, where I was actually completing like client projects and it felt like the stakes were a little bit higher, right? I wasn't shooting videos for my company. I was like shooting videos for somebody else's company. And so I just kind of started to take note of that process and learn and understand. And after about 18 months of working with them, I had a lot of really cool opportunities. I was shooting a lot of like political videos. I was producing a sports podcast, which I know is like totally different, but we were doing, just a bunch of different kind of random things at this agency. And I actually ended up getting laid off, which is, the biggest turning point in my career. And I always like to say I got fired for dramatic effect, but that's actually not true. It was really, I just don't think they saw the value in video, honestly. It was a political first, political focused agency. And they were just focused on different things. They were focused on email marketing and print marketing and things of that nature. And video didn't have the same impact as it does now back then, even though it was only a few years ago. This was, I guess, about 2.5 years ago. So it really wasn't that long, but video didn't seem to be in the same place that it was today. So I just don't think they saw the value of it. And they kind of ended up shutting departments down a little bit then. And so I got laid off, and that was in May. That I was working that job, and I was just kind of, it was in Harrisburg. So I was back in Pennsylvania, after, being away from PA for a year. And I was just kind of like, I don't really know like what to do with myself. And I started like looking for jobs. And I had kept one client that kind of was financially keeping me stable throughout the time. Because I was in Harrisburg from May until through September, of that year with no job, and just, working with this one client, and they were paying me well to produce their podcast still. And I don't know. I was just like, I don't really know what to do with myself. I was like so shocked that I had gotten laid off. I like never saw that being a part of my story. And, so I just kind of started thinking, I was like, okay, well, I don't really want to be in Harrisburg long term. Like, I don't want to be in Pennsylvania. Like, I would rather, explore other options. I'm initially from Northern Virginia. So, but everything just felt really expensive. I didn't have a job. I didn't have, a ton of money. And I was just like, I'm not sure. So I ended up basically, doing a very light amount of research. And actually I remember it was September 1st, my rent was due. And I was like, I can either, make my rent payment and just keep in this same pattern of not knowing what's really going on in my life and not really having any sort of like serious direction. I was like, or I can kind of take a chance and take a risk. And so I had called my buddy who I worked with at the agency. We both got laid off, like literally in the same meeting. Actually, we got laid off together. And I was like, I don't really know what to do. And he was like, you should just like leave, like move and go somewhere. He's like, I don't know where. And so I really just explored my options on the East Coast in terms of cities. And, things up north, everything north of DC seemed a little too expensive. And so anyway, I basically landed on Atlanta. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get an Airbnb in Atlanta and just start networking, as much as I possibly can. And then I'll start hunting for a job as well. And hopefully I can get picked up by like an agency down there or some cool like in-house company. So anyway, October 3rd, I moved down here. That was 2 years ago. And, I started doing that. I started networking. I was walking around the city with my camera and just like trying to figure it out. I was looking for jobs. I just wasn't finding anything that I was like really that interested in. It felt like they were either really beginner positions that, for a lack of a better term, felt below me. And I'm not normally the type of person that's like, oh, that's beneath me. I will take on any kind of work. But it just wasn't going to meet my needs, especially financially. And then everything else seemed, I didn't have enough experience for, right? They were like, we're looking for 5+ years with agency experience or, this, that, and the third. And I was like, well, I wouldn't qualify for any of those either. And so I was like, you know what? Like, this might be the time. And, I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready personally, mentally, financially. But I didn't really have anywhere else to go. And I didn't really feel like just continuing to look for a job that I knew that it would be fine, but I wouldn't be like the happiest there. And so I ended up, in January of 2024, I opened an LLC and started my company. And, ultimately, it felt like I took a job that I was underqualified for still, but I signed myself up for it and was like, you know what, I'm going to figure it out. And if I fail, I fail. And yeah, so that was 2 years ago. I'm still here now. I've had 2 okay years in business. They were starting up. I didn't know anybody moving to Atlanta. I had no connections down here, no clients, no nothing. And really just, I was on LinkedIn and Instagram and just trying to connect with anybody and everybody that I could. And so, yeah, I officially made that leap, and I don't think I could ever really go back to working for anybody else. I love working with people. And even now I love getting hired to be, somebody's DP or whatever on set, and working for other people. But in terms of like getting a full-time job somewhere, I don't think I could do it these days.
Wow. That's a really inspiring story. I was going to ask how you ended up in Atlanta, but I never, I thought you might have had like a family connection or knew people there, but if it was just random, just wanted like a change of scenery and like take a risk. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty much that. I mean, I've been a West Coast guy for a while. I love the West Coast. I've traveled a lot out to the West Coast. But within my personal life, I had some stuff going on, and just wanted to be a little bit closer to family. And I was like, I want to be able to get home within a day. I was like, LA can wait. I can go out there at whatever point, if necessary. But I just wanted to be somewhere that I could get home in a day. And Atlanta, I always heard, like, whenever I mentioned Atlanta, they were like, oh, that's a good spot. That's a good spot for video. And it's just been, a city that's grown exponentially over the last decade and will continue to grow, in the years to come. And I remember telling my parents my plan, because I didn't even actually tell them when I did it, because I really decided everything in a day. Like, I submitted to end my lease on September 1st. I booked an Airbnb for 3 months on September 1st. And then, like, after all of that, I basically called my dad and I was like, hey, like, this is what I'm doing, by the way. And, they were like pretty shocked, and they're like, I don't know if that's a very good idea. And I was like, no. Like, I'm going to look for a job and stuff. Like, I have some money, like, I'll be okay. I was like, I'm paying rent here. What's the difference of doing it in a different city? And, I just never looked back. There were many times that I was like, I'm going to end up having to go back home, because this thing is failing, but somehow, by the grace of God, I'm still here. So just blessed for kind of every turn in my journey so far.
Wow. That's a great story. I love it. Let's talk about networking for a second, because I'm sure that seemed really daunting, going to a new city where you didn't know anyone. So I'm sure you had to be intentional about it. I know you said you just like walk around with your camera and like be on LinkedIn, but let's unpack that a little bit. Like, what were some strategies that you took, or like I'm sure that, I had, another friend of mine, Brian, on a previous podcast, and we talked about networking, and, his philosophy is like all about like, how do you provide value to other people, when building connections up? So, and I think that's like that's an approach that I take as well. Just try to have it be like, not like, what can you do for me, but what value can I provide to this person? So that's sort of like the foundation of how I approach networking, but I'd love to hear like your perspective on that and what worked for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you definitely hit the nail on the head. Like, how can I provide value to somebody else, not how can I get something out of it? And back to something I had mentioned earlier, was just like being somebody that, people want to work with is like of utmost importance. And I had never moved to a big city. I mean, if you know Harrisburg's small, right? So I had never moved to a big city, let alone moving to a place that I didn't know anybody. And so I actually remember calling my cousin, who had recently done that. He had moved to Chicago, and I was just like, I'm looking for any kind of advice or tips or anything like that. And he basically was just kind of explaining this concept of like, just be willing to like work for people and help people and provide value, but also know when to like be quiet and just soak up information like a sponge and just kind of be in the corner of the room, right? Like, you don't want to make yourself too big and you don't want to make yourself too small. Like, just be who you are. And so that was kind of the approach that I took into it. And man, I walked around Atlanta with my camera for at least like the first month, kind of using the line, anybody that would talk to you, right? Like, and a lot of people, if you have a camera in your hand in Atlanta, most likely throughout the day, somebody's going to come up and talk to you about it. And I just was always using the line like, I moved here 3 days ago, and just like looking to connect with people. And it wasn't overly fruitful in terms of connections, but it just kind of gave me like this sense of confidence of like, okay, I can do this. Like, I'm just going out and talking to people, random people I may never see again, probably will never see again. And so it just kind of like started to build that skill. And then also on like the internet side of things. So I really hit the outreach hard on Instagram and was really just DMing a bunch of other videographers, directors, big and small, people that I felt like were around my level, above my level, anybody and everybody. And I was just like, hey, I'm Christopher. I just moved here. I don't know if you need any help, BTS, anything like that. Like BTS was always like a go-to for me. It was like, I'll come on your set and shoot behind the scenes, like totally free. I just want to like get my foot in the door. And so that's actually what really led to kind of my first major connection. A guy down here, Jonesy Films, like big shout out to Jonesy, because as soon as I connected with him, he DM'd me right back and was like, "Oh yeah, I actually might have a gig that you can come help me with." And going into that, I was just like, okay, how can I be this person where no matter what, you walk away from this experience, be like, I want to work with Christopher again, because it was easy to work with him and it was an enjoyable process, an enjoyable experience. So that was kind of one side of things, in terms of networking. And then the other, is just like, where can you provide value and like not ask for anything in return? And it's not done just through your words, but also like through just, I guess, your attitude and your overall, like, charisma comes to my mind, but that's not exactly the word that I'm looking for, but just kind of the vibe that you give off is like, can you pass the vibe check of like, do people want to have you on set? Like, I've worked with people and I'm like, I'll never have you on set again. And there are like some key things that I can pick up on from people that are like that, where I'm just like, I just don't want to work with you. And so I was like, how can I be the exact opposite of that? And I think providing value and asking for nothing in return is like a huge way to do that. And that was a skill that I had to practice. I had to like get outside of my comfort zone. I'm not like the most outgoing guy. I'm not the most like social person in the world. It doesn't come like super natural to me. I really have to, I'm better at like kind of the one-on-one type of situation, like, after we've built a bit of a relationship. But I was like, how can I just put myself out there, allow myself to be seen, allow myself to be heard, but I don't have to make a ton of noise. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I just want to like give. I just want to give my time. And I think that was like really big and really helped me in that first 3 months of being down here, of just building connections with a handful of people. And from there, I mean, Jonesy and I still work together. We have actually a project coming up, soon. I've made a lot of connections that way. And it's been helpful. And I think that that's something that, I would hope somebody would say about me, is that I'm enjoyable to work with and that I ultimately just want to give. So I think that that's probably the most important piece of networking, is like, are you the guy that people likes? And, I think an important way to do that is just, liking other people and finding what to appreciate in other people. And so anyway, that's kind of my long-winded answer of saying, how can you provide value with asking nothing in return? So yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, some words that come to mind are like being genuine and just authentic and just real, because like if you go into something, like obviously like we all want to advance our careers and like we want to earn money, and that's just human nature, I suppose. But also if you go into like an interaction with it being like, I just want to gain something personally out of this, without being like, how can this be like how can I provide some like mutual benefit here? Like I think that's the differentiator, and just not being like so self-centered about it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's, a big theme that I noticed, like, on your website and LinkedIn, is having story be at the center of video content. So
Yeah.
I love to talk about that, because I don't think there are so many videographers out there. Like it's not that difficult to find someone to like produce a video, but I think like you have to find these differentiating factors in your work that help you stand out, but also, and we can get into this next as well, is actually like implementing a strategy to get results for people, and just not having video be just like a decoration, but like a tool. So, but I'm sure that all stems from like the story and prioritizing storytelling. So can you talk about the importance that storytelling plays in your work, and why that can actually translate to results, like for your clients? And if you're talking with a potential client, like what's the thought process that you go through in terms of like, okay, how can I tell this person's story and not just, oh, how can I create some surface level video that may or may not perform well?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one thing that you had just said was like being genuine in terms of networking. And I think that that's really like where it starts, because that's like what people connect with. So networking is kind of the same when it comes to that as it does with video storytelling for your business. Like people want authenticity, they want like a genuine feel, and they want to feel like they're being a part of something. And storytelling is just, I mean, a very proven way of doing that. I mean, it's happened in cinema for a very long time. And so I kind of recognized that through research. It wasn't like some, beautiful epiphany that I had and only I had, right? Like this is not, new information, but I kind of was researching that. And as I was trying to figure out like, okay, there's a lot of videographers, especially in Atlanta. Everybody's a content creator. Like everybody shoots video. You go to an event, everybody's got their iPhone with a gimbal and everybody can shoot video, right? And so I was like, okay, well, how can I differentiate myself? And one thing that I felt like I've always had a skill with was just communication and connecting with people. And so I really kind of was like, okay, how can I take my strengths as like an individual and apply them to my business? Because that seems like that would ultimately bring me the most amount of success, was just like truly like, and very genuinely like staying true to myself. And so I wanted to focus on storytelling. I've always had more of like a documentary style to my videos, less of like a maybe commercially style. And so I was just like, okay, this seems like, a good business model. And it seems like, it's starting to become trendy. People are wanting stories, right? People are wanting quality stories. And so I started kind of implementing that. And I remember one of the first, larger kind of contracts that I landed in my business, is with a solopreneur. And, throughout kind of the discovery phase and like trying to understand, who she was, what she was looking to do, I just was like asking as many questions as I possibly could to like understand her story. And I think a key to telling a good story is like knowing theirs inside and out. And that can be hard to do, right? If somebody just like hires you to shoot a video, right? And you're like, okay, well, I got to shoot the video, but like, do I really need to know like your origin story, where you come from, all that, when you started, right? Your history. It doesn't seem overly necessary, but I think that as you can kind of position yourself as a partner for their company and being like, no, like I want to be an extension of your team. I want to know all of the ins and outs of your business. That's when you can really start to like understand their story and kind of understand and what they're looking to express to their audience. And that just helps me kind of understand, okay, these are the questions that I need to ask to kind of like understand that more and bring that out of them. And ultimately then we can kind of formulate a plan of like, okay, here's how we can kind of tell your story in the most effective way that's like digestible for your audience. Not everything is going to be told, but what are like the highlights? And so as I started doing that more and more, I found that people really appreciated like the storytelling approach. And so I totally started to like focus my entire brand around that. I mean, right now my large kind of ticket sale item is like a brand story video for businesses, like somebody that's looking to connect more with their audience. It's not about like a direct ROI right away. It's not about like we need more leads on Instagram. It's about like we want to consistently show up in an authentic manner for our audience to build lasting connections. Because, a viral video or something that pops off on YouTube, like that's great and can definitely get eyes on your business. And, you can't have sales without eyes on your business. So I understand that. I'm like not bashing the idea of that, but it's really about just like kind of telling that story in the most authentic way for your audience, because people want to be a part of your story. They don't want to be a fly on the wall. They don't want to be like, oh, I, dip into their services whenever I need, or I purchase their product when I need. Like they want to be a part of like a movement, or a part of like, where the company's heading and a part of that journey. And I think people really value that. So I started to understand that more, and I was like, I need to tap into this. And so that's when I just was like, okay, I need to focus fully on storytelling And I felt like that was ultimately what was going to provide the best results for my clients personally. Maybe it's not for everybody, but for me, I was like, okay, this is what I want to offer. This is what I feel like I'm best at. And so that's kind of how I landed on that and started to understand the importance. I'm still even learning, how valuable that is, right? Like, I don't think we've, as a society, like fully tapped into that. I think from a big, perspective, right? You see kind of like the Apples of the world, or the State Farms, or the IBMs, right? Like all those different industries, those industry leaders, like they're definitely tapping into storytelling, so it's like, okay, well, how can I tap into storytelling with this person that has, 2 employees? And so that was kind of the approach that I took.
Yeah, that's great. And it's kind of like you just alluded to, it's not only applicable to a video business, just in general, like whatever offer or service that you have, just centering it around the why or the mission of the brand and their goals is so important. Like one thing that I've started to really do, if I'm having a conversation with a potential client, like a couple years ago, I would just make it, or even just a year ago, not too long ago, I would just make it about, okay, like how many deliverables do you need? And to just make it all technical talk. And now really prioritize like asking, like digging deep, peeling back the layers of being like, okay, what are your goals here? What's your mission? What's your like identity as a brand? Because, like I've been editing for a while, I've gotten pretty good at it. And it's like that's the implementation of something greater, like you have to get to like really understanding the goals of who you're working with first and putting the majority of the upfront time towards that. And not just because I realized that my priorities were kind of like backwards in that regard sometimes, where, I edit a lot of podcasts, for example. And I think a great way to demonstrate this is like, if I have a podcast and I can upload it to Opus Clip or an AI clip generator, and it'll give me like 20 clips to use. Yeah. You go through it and you're like, okay, sure, it made these clips, but the majority of these are totally missing the point. Like they would not want to post these because it's not catering to their audience or the message that they're trying to put out there, like for this little isolated instance of trying to promote the podcast. Like, so that's why I think that's a great way of demonstrating that. Like, yeah, you can, on a technical level, you can have, and maybe AI and machine learning will get better and better in this, and I'm sure that it will, but it really takes like a genuine understanding of who you're working with to get the best results from them. And that starts with, like you said, it's asking those questions. And I think that's often overlooked, like just in whatever offer you have, but for like a video offer, it's super important. And I think I love that approach that you're taking.
Yeah. In almost every single one of my kind of discovery phases, whether I book the contract or not, people have always said, I appreciate the questions that you ask. It seems like you're very genuine in wanting to understand our business. And I think that that's where it starts, because I always ask, right, in discovery, like, what's your differentiator? What's your unique selling proposition? Like, what stands, you out of the competition? And gosh, 98% of people say our people, right? Our team is what makes us special. And so it's like, okay, well, this is people focused. Like people want to do business with people. They don't want to do business with a service or a product, right? They want a genuine connection. Stories, like the best way of doing that is like, how can you like bring somebody in, tell their story, and allow that story from that person to then resonate with somebody else, not a product, not a service. Maybe if it's a product or service that you really need, even it's like, no, how can this single person, how can their story kind of impact and sway like my decision making of, really like purchasing something, right? Because that's ultimately the goal of videos. Like, of course I want to shoot a beautiful video and have it cinematic and all that, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, like businesses come to me to get a video because they want more leads and they want more sales, right? And they want their business to grow and they want their business to scale. So it's like, okay, how do you kind of like reverse engineer that and start with that story and then be like, okay, if we focus here, that's how we'll ultimately achieve those things. And yeah, I mean, people they want to do business with people, and the more that they can understand, right, like that client experience, what they're going to get when they're signing up with a service. I keep referring to services. I mainly work with service-based businesses. I don't do a whole lot of stuff in product. So I can really just speak to service-based, but when you're going to work with a company, and even myself as a consumer, like I look for this if I'm looking for a service as, just a purchaser, it's like, I want to know before I have to reach out, before I have to walk in the door, I want to know what my experience might be like with these people. And video and storytelling is just the best way to do that.
Right on. All right. Final topic that I want to dive into is just the current state of the video industry and also where it's headed. Because I think, I don't know, it can, like, from people I talk to, it can seem like it's feast or famine. Like, some people are doing really well. Some people are struggling to find work. And I just think, like, with the rise of AI and like just auto-generated videos where you don't even need to set up cameras or like actually own any like video gear. And I mean, it's kind of like you said before, everyone's a videographer or a content creator. Like the phone in your pocket can produce like just as high quality of, generally speaking, like with some limitations, but like you can create a lot of great stuff with just your phone. So I love the approach that you take of calling yourself a video strategist. And I really think that that's where the industry's headed. And I've tried to like put that hat on as well, as like kind of moving away from, I'm a videographer that will shoot or produce a great video, or I'll produce your podcast for you and it will be like technically flawless. And that's really important. It's not undermining that at all. But absolutely, I think as the accessibility of being able to produce like technically proficient videos and podcasts or whatever you produce, as that becomes easier and easier for the consumer to do, like you're going to have to sort of, I think that people in the video industry are already having like a reckoning of, okay, just me having a camera and being able to edit stuff is just not enough. Like I need to actually implement a strategy and a plan, and we need to center this around results and so much more. And I think it's like oftentimes when videographers or video producers are working with clients, it's like you make the video and then you're like, see ya, and that's the end of the relationship once the video's done. And I think it's really extending it beyond that to like holding their hand and helping them use it beyond the process of just the production. Like that's my perspective on it. That's where I think the industry's going. So I'd love to have your perspective on that whole concept of like, first of all, where do you think the industry is right now? And are you optimistic for the future? Or like what opportunities do you see going forward? No, it's a big question.
That's a good question. That's a good question. I mean, I think the industry is definitely an interesting state. I try and have as many conversations with people as I can that are also in the industry. And I just hear different takes. Like I hear some people are crushing it. I hear some people are like really struggling, and kind of both like at all levels, right? Like not just beginners, but like advanced people that have been in the industry for a long time, like they're struggling. And so I think it really just kind of depends. But one thing that I like to say, and it's interesting that you actually mentioned the idea of creating a video and then be like, all right, see it. Like I literally say that to my, people that I'm like in a discovery call with. I'm like, I don't want to be somebody that just shoots you a video and sends you the file and be like, all right, like let me know if you need any other videos. Like I want to send you a video and be like, okay, now we have to implement the plan and the strategy of like how to use this video so we can actually maximize it for you, because there is nothing more frustrating than when you send the client the video and they like post it wrong on Instagram, or it's not the right format, or it's not the right file, and so it doesn't look the highest quality, and it's like, oh my gosh, we just did all that work and like you didn't even post it right. Like that's frustrating. So it's like, how do you avoid that? And I know I was getting a little ahead of myself, but in terms of the industry, I don't know. I think you just have this really large gap of like, people that on one end that just kind of want to like shoot the video and like move on to the next. And I think that that's like, fine. I don't want to like bash anybody in this industry, but then you kind of have this other side of things where it's like, no, we want to be a strategic partner for you and we want to build a lasting relationship. Like we want to be your partner for whenever you have video needs, or even if you just want, like, if you want to call me on the phone and be like, hey, we had this video idea of thinking about doing it in-house. Like, we want to just get your thought and opinion on it. Like I want those relationships. So I would love to kind of see the industry start shifting more towards that. And then another thing too, I would say, is like pricing. It's like people in the industry is like, I hear that, like I see the discourse online of like people, griping over, young videographers that are like undercutting others. And I don't know, it's like a tough subject to I guess talk about, because everybody's just like at different stages. But I would just say that the important part of that is like, and this was one of the most valuable pieces of advice that I was given when I started my business. Like, you don't need every client, you just need the right ones. And so the reality is that not everybody is going to be a good fit for you. Even if you're like starving and need the work and need the money, like, cause you have bills to pay, like there's a very real side of that, of like, just as a freelancer, like needing to make money, but not every client's going to fit, and not every client is going to align with, your values and the way that you want to like structure your business or structure your pricing or your process or however that looks. Like, so kind of holding out until you find those right people to create like a really good work experience. That's like where, the magic is. Like, that's where, you're going to create something that actually like works really well. So I guess I don't really have a great answer, of where I feel like the industry is now. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough about the industry as a whole. I just feel like I hear a lot of different things. I talked to a guy last week and he's been running a business down here in Atlanta for like 10 years. And he's like, I'm just in a complete dry spell. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I hear you. Like I am too, but I've also only been doing it for 2 years, like, so and then I talked to another guy like who's run his business for like a year and he's like crushing it right now. So I think it's just kind of about putting yourself out there to find the right people that really align with that. And sometimes you have to say no, and it can be a hard no. Like I've definitely said no to some projects that would have been some, a decent little chunk of change in my pocket for some bills that I needed to pay. But I was like, I'm not wanting to like get into this relationship with you because I just don't think that we are fully in alignment. And so that's kind of one piece. And then, I mean, do you want to go into some of the AI stuff? Because that's like a whole other, side of the industry that is definitely like really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. We can. Sure.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting conversation. I feel like I've been having a lot of conversations about AI. I kind of get all fired up about it, but I heard recently that quality equals trust. And I think that that's like really important to keep in mind, because as AI starts to develop and becomes just quite frankly mind-blowing, everybody's like using it. And everybody's like, how can I implement AI into my business? How can I use AI video? How can I like avoid a videographer and like completely do this on my own? But I think what's going to start to happen is everybody's content's just going to start looking the same. And you're going to remove and lose some of the storytelling element because it's not authentic. It's not genuine. It's not about human connection. And so I feel confident, I guess, in my role. I want to use AI. I want to implement AI into my business. I think all of that's great, but I'm a firm believer that AI will never be able to provide what I provide, which is like a really good intent listening ear and a skill that is able to kind of take that information and like strategize with it. And so I don't feel too worried, but I know that AI is like completely shaping kind of the industry and changing a lot in that right now. I'm excited to see where it goes. I mean, I like am and I'm not, I guess. I don't know. It's hard hard to kind of figure out like where exactly to lean on that. But yeah, I think, quality is going to equal trust. And if you can create a really quality product that is very clearly, human faces and human interaction and, someone or a business's true story and not just like a AI video or like stock video. I don't know. I see people's websites and they're like, oh, well, we have video on our website. And I'm like, yeah, but it's, some AI voiceover with a bunch of stock videos. Like I skip through that right away because I don't care to watch it. I'm just scrubbing through to see if there's any interview to it. Like, because if there's interview, then I'll watch it. But if there's no interview, if there's nobody talking, that I can see, like, what's the point? And so anyway, I think it's an interesting conversation to have, and it'll be interesting to see kind of as it develops over the next few years. But as long as we can, stay strong in creating quality content, I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, well said. And everything's moving so quickly. So it's just all about kind of like staying on top of trends or adapting accordingly, I suppose. Just to touch on one thing you said about like just it's really the distinction between building, it's the short term and the long term. And one thing I've really been trying to do is build and invest in long-term client relationships. Like there's several podcasts that I edit, and I always like, if I can recognize that, okay, this is a person, this is the type of work that I want to be doing. This is the kind of client that I want, and just really double down on like, okay, how can I like really invest in this? Like, for example, I have two clients that are in Colorado. So last weekend, there was like a race there that they're both like affiliated with. I went there and I ran a 5K and I met them in person for an hour. And I never met them in person before. It'd only been over email. But these are the people that I want to be working with for years to come. And me going there and shaking their hand and actually putting like a face to this and like meeting in person, it goes such a long way. And that's just one example of doing that. But I've really started to use I did that whole trip on my dime, but I view it as an investment in the client relationship and thinking long term. So that's one thing that came to mind as you were saying that. I know we could like unpack all the AI stuff as well, but I think like that's the biggest takeaway like going forward that I wish people would do more is just think about the long term and not just like, okay, I'm going to do this quick project. I'm going to get paid. Good luck. I hope it works out. And I'm going to move on to the next short-term project. Because if you just do, and I guess there's a place for that, depending on what it is, but I've been trying to move beyond that myself. So
absolutely. Yeah, I always try and tell my clients, whether they're a current client or somebody that I'm trying to land as a client, is like, I just want to build a relationship with you. Like, that's my ultimate goal. I think that that's what's going to serve us both the most, right? Because, if we don't have that relationship, if there's a lack of trust there, then it's like you got to start the process all over of finding somebody that you can trust. And that can be hard, right? I'm working with a client right now and we're, fairly quickly developing a more personal relationship or a friendship. And at first I was like, whoa, this feels kind of weird. Like, you're my client. But then as I kind of started to think about it, I was like, no, this can be really impactful and this can be really beneficial because it's just important to like the people that you want to work with. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about networking is like, how can you be the guy that people want to be around? People want to have you in the room. And that is, of utmost importance to me, both for myself as an individual, for the crew that I bring on set. Like, how can we create such a quality client experience that makes them go, I don't really know how this video is going to turn out, but I want them to be on our set next time. I want to work with them on our next project because I just enjoyed the experience. And people always come back to customer experience. So yeah, going out to Colorado and shaking hands and just meeting somebody, even though that's not a small investment to make, but I guarantee that that's like a really big positive thing for them in their eyes. And they're going to remember that. And, now it's like, okay, well, we don't have to go search for another editor. Like we have this guy that like wants to work with us and, we want to work with him. So I just think that that's like so important.
Awesome. Well, Christopher, this has been an awesome conversation. Honestly, exceeded my expectations. I think we covered so
Sweet.
many topics.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to view your work or like reach out to you for services or whatever, where should they go?
Yeah, so my website, Merrill Film Group, I have a little contact form on there. It says "Let's strategize," not just "Let's talk," because I'm all about strategy. And then, yeah, Merrill Film Group on Instagram as well. And then if you want to follow kind of more of my personal work, Filmed by Christopher, also on Instagram. That's kind of the brand behind the business, if you will. So yeah, any of those places, feel free to reach out. Would love to have a chat with anybody. I love talking about this stuff. It gets me all fired up. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for your insights today, and I wish you so much success going forward, and thanks again for taking the time.
yeah, thanks, Dylan. I really appreciate it.